Hi everyone, Brian here, back in my domain after my holiday away, and I have a day pretty much to myself, and the intention today is to make some of the several videos that I have promised to make and that I need to catch up on. I've got to make some more videos for the Tarot to the Nine series, and I also need to do my draw for the How Do You Tarot tag, so I'm hoping to get to at least some of that today. But I wanted to come on first of all to make a video which is really a bit of an impromptu video. I hadn't really planned to make this, but it's one of those videos where I just thought I need to say some things, and I thought it would be a good idea to say those things first so that I can then concentrate on the other videos I have to make. So that's what this video is to be. And you'll see from the title what topics I'm going to be covering, or at least some of them. And I haven't really scripted this video in any way. I don't really script any of my videos, but I haven't even really taken very many notes to guide me. So I am going to be talking a little bit off the cuff, and we'll just see where it goes. So first, what I want to do is show you, first of all, smokeless incense. This is a great revelation to me. I love the smell of incense. I think I mentioned before that I'm always amazed when I see tarot tubers or any YouTuber who uses incense, light an incense stick or cone or whatever, and then proceed to make a video while the incense is billowing around them, because if I did that I would just be coughing and sputtering. So I love the smell of incense once it is kind of dissipated, but I don't love the smokiness and so on. And then I discovered there is a way of having delicious incense smells with minimal smoke. First of all, you don't need one of these, but it's helpful to have a burner of this sort. It doesn't have to have a pentagram on it, but it can, that has a grill. So you can see through this. This is like a mesh grill on the top. And you put that on the top, and the idea is, of course, you put incense there, and then you have a flame underneath and it smokes and so on. But that of course will burn the incense and melt the incense. So what I have discovered is if you take a bit of foil, a bit of tin foil, and you place it over the grill, and then you take your incense, and of course I've probably lost my incense. You use this kind of incense, which is the kind of you know, the kind of crystally kind of incense, resin type incense. This is pine resin, and this one which I'm going to use is called Prinknash, which is based on Prinknash Abbey in the UK, and it doesn't really smell until it burns, but when it burns or heats up, I should show you what I'm doing, by the way. I'm just putting the resin on the foil. When it heats up, you get a delicious aroma as it kind of melts and heats and smokes slightly. And the smell of this, to me, it smelled like Christmas and old churches, or Christmas in old churches. It's just delicious. So you put a few grains of the incense on the foil, and then I put a little bit of foil inside as well so that I can have a tea light that is quite close to the foil. The idea is you put the tea light into your incense burner, and then you light it. Using my trusty lighter thing, you just light the tea light like so, and what you have then is you have a flame which is just below the foil, which is on top of the grill, and the incense is on the grill. And what will start to happen is the foil, of course, will heat up, and then the incense itself will start to melt and will actually kind of smoke a little bit. The closer the flame is to the foil, the smokier it is. If it's not too close to the foil, then what you get is a kind of, well, the incense doesn't really burn, it kind of cooks, and you get this lovely, quite intense, but at the same time gentle aroma that permeates the room, but smoke doesn't permeate the room. Now, I know that some people will probably say, oh, tin foil, I'm scared of tin foil, it's going to poison me, but I have seen no evidence that suggests that heating tin foil would in any way cause a problem for the air that you breathe. If you have heard otherwise, feel free to let me know. Although, to be honest, I think if you're going to be breathing in incense fumes and smoke from incense, that's probably just as bad as anything else. So I'm not too worried. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but it is beginning it's beginning to smoke just a little bit. You just get little wisps coming up. I don't know if you can see that. And delicious. You get a lovely aroma. Now you can make one of those yourself. I have seen a video, and I'll try and find the video and link it below, of somebody who made their own incense burner by using really thick foil and standing it in a plant pot of earth and making a kind of bridge out of the foil so that it stands up, and then putting the incense on the top and then the tea light underneath, so you don't actually have a burner at all. It's kind of homemade. So I'll try and find that video if I can remember who did it. But yeah, that's smokeless incense, and that's my tip for the day. So with that done, I will take a sip of my tea and we will begin. Cheers everyone, and of course we've got to read the Yogi Tea slogan. Today we have, develop the power of listening. Good advice, and kind of related to the topic of today's video, because what I wanted to talk about was a subject that has been covered a number of times on the pagan and tarot YouTube community and more widely. Recently there's been a tag around, I'm talking about authenticity, let's just say it, authenticity. A tag has been doing the rounds fairly recently, and a number of people I've seen make videos on this topic. Simon and Shane did from Hermit's Cave and Read the Wonder did a very good conversation a while ago about authenticity. Áine Órga has done a video on authenticity and eclectic paganism and spirituality. Kelly-Ann Maddox has done videos on authenticity. There are various people who've spoken about authenticity and what it means to them and how it informs their spiritual practice or tarot practice or magical practice or witchcraft practice, paganism, whatever it is, that is of importance to them. And I think it's an important topic, but the reason I kind of resisted doing a video until now, and also the reason I wanted to do a video today, was because if I'm really honest with you, and I am really honest with you, struggle with the idea of being authenticity being something that we can judge in others. And a lot of the conversations I've seen have related to our judgments or people's judgments about what constitutes authenticity or not in spiritual practice or in life in general. And if you look at the definition of what authenticity is, obviously authenticity is the quality of being authentic. And what does authentic mean? Authentic means being original, not being a copy of something, but being an original thing in itself. If you look at that in terms of us as individuals, for me authenticity is about being myself. Not being what I maybe think others want me to be, trying not to put on some kind of facade for the sake of eliciting a particular response from people, but being authentic and true to myself. Living in accordance with your own worldview. That to me is what authenticity is about. But I am kind of reminded to consider that when we say be authentic to oneself, a question that comes into my mind is, which self are we talking about? Because, don't we all have different selves? I know that certainly I have different selves in the sense that I might have a slightly different way of operating when I'm in my workplace than I do at home. I might have a slightly different way of operating when I'm dealing with somebody who is in an official capacity as opposed to dealing with somebody as a friend. I might have a different kind of approach when I am in a position of authority, or as I sometimes am in my work life, or if I'm in a position of imparting information as a teacher as opposed to being in the position of student. So we all have different selves. I'm a son, I'm a partner, I'm an uncle, I'm a friend, I'm a boss, I'm a subordinate, all kinds of different roles that I play. And, you know, those different roles will show up in me at different times depending on my, depending on the setting I'm in. That to me does not mean that any one of those is more or less authentic than any other. To me that simply means that, you know, I am multifaceted and most people are multifaceted. So, you know, the question about, you know, being authentic to yourself, it's interesting to consider which self. And if you look at, you know, some spiritual and psychological disciplines, you know, in Huna there are different selves, in psychosynthesis we talk about different selves, sub-personalities. In the Enneagram, and I've covered some of the Enneagram in my my series on tarot, Tarot to the Nines, you know, the Enneagram deals with subtypes, so you have different types of, the 9 types on the Enneagram have different subtypes. So we are legion, we are all made up of different facets, different parts of our personality. And really, you know, if we're to say, you know, what is our authentic self? Well, maybe our authentic self is the self that existed before we were born, the self that existed before we developed a personality, the self that existed before we are put in the position of having to interact with others in the world. So for me, authenticity is a tricky thing to define, other than to define it for yourself. So the other thing that I want to say about authenticity is that there seems to be an idea, or I've seen an idea sometimes presented, that authenticity is somehow a description of a person's morality. But authenticity is not, there's nothing morally absolute about authenticity. You know, you can be an authentic Buddhist and you can also be an authentic Nazi. You know, you can be an authentic nurse and you can be an authentic serial killer. You know, if that is what you are, good or bad, authenticity simply means being the thing that you are. And who is to determine that other than yourself and other than, you know, the way that you behave in the world? You know, we see people's authenticity demonstrated by the way that they are in the world. And I feel a bit like, you know, if we're making, I find myself, I find that it's a life's work to figure out how to be authentic myself. So I'm not particularly minded to make judgments about other people's authenticity. And one of the things that I see sometimes being presented as an example of somebody not being authentic is if they present themselves in a way that is apparently fake, that is apparently manufactured. And I've heard some people, you know, talk about the differences in YouTubers, for example. There are those who have very authentic videos because they're unpolished and they just say what they're saying, they don't over edit and so on, and they don't do all the kind of pleas for thumbs up and subscriptions and so on. And then you get the other tarot tubers or vloggers and YouTubers more generally who have very polished videos, they have very you know, professional looking graphics, they have maybe a little jingle at the beginning of their videos and so on, and they do say things like, please subscribe to my channel and, you know, click the bell icon and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they are held up as examples of those who are inauthentic, and I just don't think that's the case. I think, you know, authenticity is going to mean different things to different people. And you don't have to like the aesthetics of somebody else's approach or presentation, but just because we don't like the aesthetics of it does not mean that that person is being inauthentic. So I just think it's an interesting conversation, particularly in this community, because if you look at the kind of the reason that many of us get into the pagan YouTube community, or paganism more generally, is we have perhaps had the experience of trying to fit into communities or religious practices or worldviews that are very prescriptive, that are full of thou shalt not. And we've rebelled against it, and we've broken out of it, and I'm saying we in a very general sense. I don't specifically mean myself. I'm not particularly religious and never have been, but I was brought up, you know, in school, going to church. I went to Sunday school briefly. I stopped going when the Sunday school teacher couldn't get my name right. She kept calling me Christopher, and I said, I must have only been about 6 or something, and I said, it's Brian, and then she started calling me Christopher Brian. And at that point, I just gave up. That and the fact that she was telling me the story of Jonah and the whale, and clearly believed that it was literal. She clearly believed that this man had literally gone into the belly of a whale and had lived in the belly of a whale. And I just thought, this is not for me. So, where was I? Yes, so some of us have broken away from that kind of prescriptive thou shalt not approach. And we've come into this community because of, or one of the attractions of the community has been its inclusiveness, its openness, its apparent ability to accommodate different perspectives under a broad umbrella. And one of the things I've certainly appreciated in the community is the fact that it's often possible to have conversations about very differing views within the community without it descending into argument or polarised positions. But that's not always the case. So it is possible within this community as well to find those polarised positions and those arguments. And I'll come on to that in a second with the big issue that I wanted to touch on, that many other people have touched on as well recently. But I think, you know, where I'm getting to with this is we are entitled to be whatever we are. And I think, for me, authenticity, you know, considerations of authenticity are best spent on ourselves, considering if we are being authentic and checking out whether we are being authentic to ourselves. I kind of cringe inwardly when I hear comments and conversations that critique other people's authenticity, because I just think that authenticity isn't something that you can really appropriately judge from the outside, because you don't know what's going on inside somebody else. You don't necessarily understand why they're presenting themselves in the way that they are presenting themselves. And judgments about authenticity are still judgments. And for me, I'm less interested in getting to grips with other people's authenticity than I am in getting to grips with my own tendency to judgmentalism. And, you know, if you are in this world and you have an ego, and we all do, then there will be a tendency to judge. That is what we do. That's what human beings do on this planet. We judge things. But are we aware of the fact that we're judging things? And are we checking out what the results of those judgments are? Are we checking out whether they are serving us or whether they are boxing us into corners? Are we checking out the impact our judgments are having on ourselves and on other people? Or are we simply allowing the judgments to run and to provoke reactions and arguments and potentially distance between ourselves and other people? What else do I want to say about authenticity? I suppose the other thing that I want to say about authenticity is simply that, you know, it can be hard sometimes to know, even if we are being authentic ourselves, because we can sometimes feel that we are behaving authentically. But if we get really still and we really look at ourselves and our behaviours, it can be quite sobering to realise how much of what we do in life is about manipulating other people to see us in particular ways. And it's not always done with ill intent, but I think many of us, and I definitely include myself in this, you know, we want to be liked. We want to be part of a crowd of some sort. We want to be accepted. Very few of us go through life actively wanting to be disliked or not caring whether we're liked or not. certainly in my own case, I've noticed that as I get older and I get more comfortable with who I am, I'm less concerned about trying to stimulate a particular reaction in other people, because I realise that I can't, you know, I can't really manipulate that anyway. They're going to react how they react. So I might try to put on a particular facade in order to get a reaction, and they may or may not react in the way that I'm hoping. And what I've also noticed is that if I do put on a facade and then get the reaction I want from someone, that doesn't feel authentic, because what I then notice is they have reacted and responded to this facade that I've put on. They haven't responded to me, and so it's a kind of a Pyrrhic victory. You know, you act in a particular way in order to get somebody to respond to you in a particular way. They respond in that way, and then there might be that moment of, oh good, I got what I wanted there, and then there's that empty feeling when you realise that you still haven't been seen. What they have seen is the facade that you've put on, and so it doesn't feel authentic. So the older I get, the clearer I get that I am less interested in manipulating other people's perceptions of me, and I'm more open to whatever reaction will come. And if people like me, that's great, I feel fine about that. And if they don't like me, that's fine too, because if that's their authentic reaction to my authentic self, then I'm cool with that. I would rather that, in fact, than I pretend something and they pretend something just in order to kind of rub along together. So there's something there about authenticity being important. My authenticity is important to me. Other people's authenticity is their business, not mine, if that makes sense. So that's a little bit about authenticity. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about in this video is related to this. And it's the big issue that has been doing the rounds of the pagan YouTube and tarot and witchcraft communities lately, and it's been all over Instagram, and it's been all over Facebook, and it's been all over Tumblr, and it's just everywhere. And that is the issue of the Sephora witch kit, or what was going to be the Sephora witch kit, because it has now been cancelled. And I'm not going to pretend that I know all the ins and outs of this, and I should preface the comments I'm about to make by saying that I don't identify as a witch from a religious point of view. I think other people who, if they looked at my worldview, and if they looked at my spiritual practices, and they looked at my interests, and they looked at my kind of aesthetic, then they would describe me as witchy, if not a witch. So I have got an interest in all of this, but I am not a witch by religious persuasion, mainly because I'm not religious. But I have got an interest in witchcraft and paganism from a spiritual perspective. And the thing about the witch kit, and for those who don't know, the witch kit is, or was to be, a collection of, I think, incense or scents and a crystal and some sage for burning and a tarot deck, or at least an image of a tarot deck, which was marketed as a kind of a starter witch kit, in the way that you might get a starter scientist kit, you know, one of these kind of science lab kits that you used to get as a kid. And it was sold through, or was to be sold through, Sephora, and was manufactured by a company called Pinrose. And it has provoked, it's been one of the most provocative things I've seen recently on the internet, certainly in terms of the pagan and tarot communities. And there have been lots of different views about this, and lots of very interesting discussions, and also a lot of heated discussions. So the reaction against it seemed to be the idea mainly that this was tacky and offensive to some, that it was taking a religious persuasion and packaging it in a commercial way, in a kind of gimmicky commercial way, and an inauthentic commercial way, and that this was a bad thing. And so many people reacted against it for that reason, and there were talks of boycotts and various things. There was a huge backlash, and the company have apologised and they have withdrawn the kit. My view on that, and I'm just talking here from my my kind of initial reaction to all of this, so this is my authentic reaction to all of this, is I actually feel quite sad that this has happened. And I feel sad for a number of different reasons. First of all, and I know that there were different reasons that people objected to the kit, and I'm not for a minute saying that there weren't some authentic and genuine and very valid reasons for objecting to the kit, but some of the objections I saw really have made me shake my head. So there were some who said that the tarot image on the kit was stolen. It wasn't. The artist of the tarot deck in question, which is the Samira May tarot, which can be bought through Make Playing Cards. I'll link it below because it has got some lovely imagery in it. Had licensed the image, and there's an image on the witch kit of I think it's the Empress card. It's either the Empress or the High Priestess. And anyway, this image had been appropriately licensed and appropriately purchased by Penrose, but they were pilloried for stealing the image. There was talk that the sage in the kit was an endangered plant. It's not, and the sage was ethically sourced. There were complaints that the kit was commercial. Well, obviously it's commercial, it's being sold. Just like tarot decks are sold, just like books on witchcraft are sold. So I found myself thinking, well, if we're going to object to the commercialism, we should all stop buying mass market tarot decks, and we should all stop buying books that are published through mainstream publishers about witchcraft. The thing that saddens me most of all is that the backlash has resulted in the pulling of this kit, so that those who may have seen something of value in the kit now don't have the opportunity to purchase it. And you know, I'm looking at an image of the kit now, and I wouldn't have bought it. It's kind of twee looking, very colourful, but here are some of the things I observe about it. I don't think it's marketed at somebody like me. You know, I don't need a starter witch kit, and most of the people who have objected to it don't need a starter witch kit. But if I wasn't part of this community, if I was trying to find my way from a spiritual sense and I saw this, here are some of the things that I might have picked up. First of all, there is an image on the kit of a woman who looks extremely powerful. She's got these horns, she's holding a moon in one hand and a wand in the other. There are astrological and alchemical symbols on a sash around her. She's got these rays of light radiating out of her. It's a powerful image. The kit is very colourful. There's lots of different shades of pink and purple and blue and green and yellow on the kit. There's something very kind of rainbow-like about it. It's saying something. There's something bright about this idea of witchiness. I see representations of the waxing and waning moon on the side of the kit. I see a representation of what might be the third eye. I see there's a crystal there which tells me there's something earth-centered about this witchy idea. There's a bundle of dried plant material, so that tells me something about the link to this idea of being a beginner witch and plant life on this planet. I see some vials of different coloured liquid, which I guess are kind of scents or oils and so on. So there's something there about the use of oils and anointing oneself, or using it for you know, exploring different ways of smelling things and so on and so forth. So there's a number of different things that are just instantly transmitted to me by that image. Now, whether you like the image or not, I think it says something about what being a witch could be. And let's bear in mind that not everyone is a witch for the same reasons. So some people are witches because they see it as a religious practice, and some people see it as a magical practice, and some people explore witchcraft for aesthetic reasons. But there's a number of just things there just in the image. The other thing I noticed about it is it has got the name Penrose at the top of it. So that's one of the things that people objected to, because it looks kind of commercial and tacky. It's like you know, putting Walmart over you know, a kind of image like that. Penrose is a women, as I understand it, is a women-owned women-run, ethical company that sources its scents ethically, make sure that they're safe for humans, make sure that they're safe and not tested on animals. And Penrose has lost business as a result of this. That makes me sad. The other thing that makes me sad is how many of us in this community got into tarot or paganism or astrology or witchcraft by exploring it first of all in a kind of fun kind of way. You know, maybe we saw a deck of tarot cards and we thought there was something a bit spooky about them, so we explored it. Maybe we went for our first tarot reading and we had that kind of shiver down our spine of something weird and magical was happening, and it led us to a serious tarot practice as a result. Maybe some of us have become devotees of astrology or even astrologers, and we got interested in astrology because we read the sun signs column in a magazine and it piqued our interest. Even though sun signs columns are the tackiest end of astrology, and many astrologers would tell you are the least useful end of astrology, but nonetheless they can be a gateway to serious astrological practice. How many people who are not yet part of this community, who are isolated and alone, who are caught up in dogmatic religious practice, who need to find a way out of all of that, who need to find a way to find their own light, would have benefited from this, would have picked up this starter witch kit as a kind of gimmick, and would have found that something inside them was turned on. We'll never know. Others might have bought it and just not gone any further with it, and you know, so what? So I feel, in all honesty, more aggrieved by the fact that a huge reaction in the community has led to the censorship of this kit than I feel aggrieved at the idea that somebody would produce such a kit. Because actually I don't see anything particularly offensive in this. When I read some of the comments online, before I'd seen the kit, I actually found myself thinking, what is this kit? It sounds like it's a starter witch hunting kit or a witch burning kit, not a starter witch kit. So the vitriol in the community has saddened me, and to some extent shocked me, although it shouldn't really shock me because I know that in any community you're going to get different views and some are going to be more extreme than others. But I think, if I'm really honest with you, I think this sets a very dangerous precedent for our community, because what it tells me is that if enough people get together and dislike something that somebody has put together and is doing and make enough noise, we can push them right back into their box or into their closet and shut them off. And you might say, well, there are many examples of when that would be a good idea, and I'm sure there are. But if we can do that within our own community to something that is, as in all honesty, relatively inoffensive by comparison to other offensive things as this, doesn't that tell us that others could do that to us more globally? And if this kit is about acting as a kind of, as tacky as it is, as gimmicky as it is, if it's acting as a gateway to a more earth-centered approach to spiritual practice, an approach that recognises the power of femininity and the divine female, or just the power of the earth and plant life, isn't that a good thing? Isn't it a good thing to say that people can find their way into this community in different ways? And who are we to judge what is tacky and isn't tacky? Like, who are we to judge what's authentic and what isn't authentic? You know, I'm reminded of Dolly Parton's comments when she says that she knows that she looks as fake as hell, but there's a brain beneath the wig and there's a heart beneath the boobs and all that. And you don't have to like Dolly Parton, you don't have to like how she looks, but she is just being her authentic self, and she is as fake as hell in terms of how she looks. She admits that herself. So the way that something looks and the way that something is presented doesn't necessarily give a full representation of what that thing is. And this kit used authentic plant material, authentic earth-based material, authentic tarot artwork to present something that I think we need more people to engage with, not less. I want more people out there who currently think of witchcraft as some weird fringe thing to understand that it can be a way into exploring our own spirituality and our connection with the earth and our connection with a higher kind of broader metaphysical range of forces than a lot of traditional religion allows us to do. And I feel sad that what we've done is we have allowed differing opinions in the community, all of which are absolutely valid. I'm not saying for a minute that people shouldn't have had their opinion about this. I think it's fine that some people didn't like it. I think it's fine that some people spoke out against it. I think it's fine that some people pointed out what they didn't want to see in this kit. I think it's really sad that that conversation has led to the kit being withdrawn. And I think it's even more sad, excuse me, that some witches in the community are celebrating the fact, because that means we are celebrating censorship. We are saying it's okay to be a baying mob that stops a company from doing their job, and that it's okay to stop some people who may have wanted to explore this kit for very genuine and dear reasons from being able to explore it. We have shut that road down. And that, I think, is a dangerous, dangerous precedent for this community. And I think it's a dangerous precedent for our own explorations of authenticity, because it puts us in the position of judging what is authentic and what isn't authentic. And you know, for me, all religion and all spiritual paths are human responses to the mystery of life. And you know, particularly in this community, we talk about it being okay to have individual responses to that mystery. So I look at this kit and think, what might this have prompted in terms of individual responses? And I think we won't know. Those who may have responded positively don't have the chance to respond positively. And that makes me sad. So that is my ramble stroke rant on the topic of authenticity and the current hot topic of the Sephora Witch Kit. Of course, I'm interested in knowing what you have to say about all of this, and I'm open to differing views as always. So please, if you want to engage in the discussion further, post your comment below. And I am now going to go and finish my tea, soothe my hoarse throat, and think about making a few more videos today. Alright, take care everyone. See you soon.